wondering what science concepts to bring into a conceptual play world? Wonder no more. In this video, I'll be sharing some of the concepts that infants and toddlers like to think about, play with, and be a part of. There are so many moments in a centre or at home that are about everyday science. So let's begin with light. Turning lights on and off, using a torch, pretty exciting. Seeing rainbows, watching the light as you're in a darkened room. What about the concept of sound? Infants lying on a veranda, for example, might be, or a concrete floor, or a wooden floor. They feel the vibrations differently. Being close to speakers and feeling the vibrations of the music when touching it. What about snuggling up into mum or dad's neck as they're talking and feeling their voice, the vibrations of their voice? Yelling into a cup is pretty exciting as well because it amplifies the sound. Hitting different materials, using different things to hit materials with because they vibrate differently and you hear them differently. That's pretty exciting too. And it's much more fun to hit something with a metal spoon than it is your finger. These are all science discoveries and science experiments in the making for infants and toddlers. You can see many more concepts that are relevant to infants and toddlers, but not all of them are directly observable. So you have to really experience them. But how do you know? Let's look at some other ideas. What about Earth and beyond? That's a huge concept. Looking into the sky and seeing the moon, noticing that there's different shapes. Then there's night and there's day, and that's experienced quite differently. Seeing the closest sun in the sky and feeling its warmth, and then at night time seeing the most distant suns in the sky and their stars. Then there's another not directly observable idea too, or concept in science for infants and toddlers that really surround them all the time, and that's in relation to solids, liquids and gases. And they are experienced as a change of state of matter. But how does this look for infants and toddlers? Holding an ice block or an ice cream or an icy pole and feeling it melt. It's changing from a solid to a liquid. What about the pizza, the cheese on the pizza? And when it's cut and it's got all its little lumps, it's a solid. It goes into the oven and it comes out again and it's soft, and then you watch it go hard again. It's changing its state. It's more of a liquid, not really a solid, but that's part of an infant's world. What about the kettle and the steam that infants see as gas? And when they are in the bath and they see the steam, and the steam goes near the window, the cold window, and it condenses. Also, what about drinks that they hold? And they feel wet on the outside. What's going on there? So many things about the change of state of matter from liquids to solids to gases, and gases to liquids to solids. What about something like gravity? Tricky one. It's an invisible pull, but infants experience it and feel it when they try to jump. They see the effects of it when they're in the high chair and they drop things. There's a bit of a pattern happening here. It always goes down. I wonder why. And many of the toys available to infants and toddlers are designed with gravity in mind, such as little boxes with little slots to post things in. They always go down. They don't pop back up again. But what about other toys that children have? Lots and lots of interesting things happening there, especially with the concept of force. The friction and the resisting forces are all part of an infant's life as they crawl and push through and feel the resistance, especially when they're going over different surfaces like grass, concrete, wood or a nice slippery floor. Bit of fun there. And what about when they have toys that they roll or they push or pull, or a jack-in-the-box with a spring? Something interesting's happening there too. So that's starting to get into storing the force and energy. Interesting one. Spinning tops, also really interesting. Mechanisms, all part of force, the push and the pull that they experience. Then there are other things that we probably think are fairly easy to consider, such as living things. Of course, that's very simple in a way, isn't it? But infants notice the family pet, but they also notice the beautiful spider. Looking for animals is part of studying living things. Do you find the slater under the rock? Or can it be found under the rotting log? Then seeing there's a pattern here. Always seem to find them under the rotting log. Or if you're in my house, sometimes I see them falling out of places they shouldn't be. What about birds? You have to learn that birds might be flying, so you look for them in the sky, or that the birds, you can hear them, are in the trees, or they might be in the bushes, because there's different kinds of birds that like to live in different parts of the bush or the bushes or the trees. Knowing where to look, and we can see a child do this, or an infant or a toddler, looking for a particular bird like a magpie, and they might look for that walking because they've had experience of it walking, but then they meet another bird that's not what they do. But watching at how they respond and where they look gives us insights into the kinds of understandings, the conceptual understandings that they're developing. But also, we can see that children are building a pattern of understanding that's foundational for an ecological view of the living things and the living world and their place in it. Really big ideas, and you're thinking, infants and toddlers? But they're building this. Looking at plants is also part of the living world. And this also begins in infancy. Picking flowers, growing vegetables, going for walks and smelling the bush. What can you eat? This is passed on as a human construction. Adults help us know what we can eat. What smells nice, what doesn't smell quite so nice, what feels lovely to touch. These are all part of experiencing the living world and coming to understand and investigate it and building conceptual understandings about plants. When you experience the plants, you begin to build patterns. What about heating? Now that's an interesting one, a little more complex again, or maybe you don't think so. Well, infants' drinks can be cold, they can be hot, and they can be warm. Heating and cooling of foods and drinks is important for infants because they probably have some preferences for how they like their bottle of milk. Hot, warm, cold, very hot, or just right, as Goldilocks would say. Goldilocks, as an early childhood scientist, knew about the continuum of temperature, and that's the important idea around heating. So there are many things that are part of a children's and infants and toddlers' world that are scientific. We have to find them, we have to watch what they're doing, and we draw attention to those ideas. They might be little seeds that grow into conceptual understandings, and they, as you can hear from my enthusiasm, are really important for building that beginning stages of conceptual development.